Welcome back to The Financial Crimes, the podcast where we explore the hidden stories behind fraud, scams, and financial abuse. I'm your host, Samantha Moore, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Nicola Harding, a criminologist and the CEO of We Fight Fraud. In this episode, we're talking to someone who was once on the other side of the scam. Our guest today is Jodie, a former financial services worker, a mother, and a woman who spent years caught in a web of coercive control, gambling addiction, and crime. Jodie went to prison after taking money from a dormant client account, later ran a ticket scam online, and has since turned her life around. But what led her there? And what finally pulled her out? Today we talk about the complexity behind her choices, the system that failed her, and what she's doing now to raise awareness, not just for victims of scams, but for people who might be heading down the same path she once did. This is not about excuses, it's about understanding. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jodie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Just want to tell us a bit about your story and where it all began.
Okay, so where to begin? Preferably the start. So we'll start when I was 18, which was when my gambling addiction kind of started. At the age of 18, I worked in financial services, worked in a bank, and had just gone through an abortion termination. I was with the father of my two children, who I have now at the time, but when I first met him, he wasn't kind of the person that you wanted. I wouldn't want my children to be with someone like that, put it that way. And no way did I think that I was going to spend a majority of my life with a man, so decided to terminate the pregnancy. And that right there was kind of where the depression started, to where my gambling started, theoretically. So 18, I was working at Barclays Bank at the time, but having gone through the termination, I was off on the sick. And with a void to fill, I turned to like online bingo, which in the beginning was fun. I mean, I was in this room called the Bingo Gold Room, and I made friends. I won money. It was like a community. I found support in there. I found comfort from that, and where I'd go every day to like just relax. And at the beginning, it was relaxing, and I enjoyed it. And I'd win quite a lot. And then it kind of changed, and it no longer was. It was still fun, but it wasn't enough for me. So I ventured onto slot machines. So like £1 a spin, then turned to £2 a spin, which eventually turned to sometimes £10 a spin. And at the age of 18, I thought this was amazing, but I had just won £33,000 at the age of 18. And I was like, wow, I'm invincible. I don't need to work at Barclays Bank anymore. I don't want to work there anyway, said an immature little girl. So I quit with immediate effect and had £33,000 in my bank account, and I thought I was the best thing in the world. My abortion was at the time very far from my mind. I think I masked it with the money, so didn't really deal with the depression and the other side of things, and it was, far from my mind. So I moved out from my parents' house, moved in with my partner at the time, who I'd just had the termination with. We rented a little place, kitted it out. I must have spent about £8,000 on sofas, TVs, made it really nice. And I was like, wow, I won £33,000. I'd only deposited like £100. And I was like, wow, if I could now go back and put in £1,000, I might win 330 grand. I've done it once, I can do it again. At this point, everything had been taken away from me. So I didn't have laptop or internet access. And back then, because this was in 2011 or 2010 maybe, it wasn't so prominent on your phone. So you couldn't do the slot machines on your phone like you can now. So I drove round to my parents' house, booted up the PC in the computer room, sat on the hard oak chair, went onto not on the current site that I'd won the money on, because I closed that site down thinking, it's not going to pay out again. I'll go onto a different one. So went onto another website, deposited £1,000 and started spinning. And spin. Called Barclays every, 10, 15 minutes to transfer more. I had about 25 grand left at the 33. And after 2 hours, I made one more telephone call to Barclays and just said, can you transfer another £1,000 from my savings account to my current account, please? And the man on the end of the phone was like, sorry, Miss Gayet, there's nothing left to transfer. So within 2 hours, I had spent £25,000. One phone in one hand, bank card in the other, and just this massive realization that I was a gambling addict. And from then, I mean, before I thought I was an addict, but this is where it really kicked in, because now I had no money. Everybody in the town, we live in a small town, knew that I'd won this money, and I was kind of like the talk of the town, and I kind of liked that. So I felt like I had to, carry on, but I had this money. So I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do? Like, my partner thinks I've got all this money. We are living this like nice, lavish lifestyle. I was 18. We were going on little holidays and stuff. And yeah, I now didn't have that. So then obviously already working in financial services, I was able to get loans quite easily because I knew people that worked there, which would give me, like, not that you'd have to pass credit checks anyway, but I had a good credit rating at that time. So I was able to get loans to hide the lie, basically, which obviously I gambled because it wasn't enough. And whilst I could get loans for a few £1,000s, it wasn't £25,000. So whilst already lost 25,000, I was racking up a hell of a lot of debt, getting myself in a bigger hole. At this point, obviously, I knew I needed a job as well. So I went out and got myself a good job. I was then working at Chelsea Building Society. And yeah, at one point when I'd exhausted all options, every loan, payday loan wasn't possible. I was now working at this financial services, and I saw an opportunity and I took it. So in my head, I never thought what I was doing was wrong. I wasn't stealing. I was just borrowing this money because I was going to win. I was going to win this money back and I would pay back and they'll never know. So in my head, just borrowing it like I wasn't breaking the law. And that is generally what I believed. But I saw a dormant account. Now, a dormant account is an account that hasn't been accessed for a long period of time. And the bank have apparently tried to get hold of the customers and been unsuccessful. And I found this dormant account, and I was a cashier, kind of, but in sales as well. So I'd log on, put the details in, printed a new passbook for the account, kept hold of the passbook myself, and would go in daily and withdraw £500 out of the account. Then on my lunch break, I would run down to my NatWest account because no longer had Barclays, because obviously exhausted that option, put the money in, and then that night I'd go back on my laptop and gamble it. And it just was a common thing that I would do. And I'd be like, right, well, I'll go in tomorrow, I'll do it again. This time I'll definitely win. I'll pay back this, I'll pay back that, and that'll be all right. Everything will be sorted. I'll be okay, and we'll get through this. But it just never happened. And I don't know how long it went on for, but months, obviously. And then one day I just said to myself, I can't keep doing this. I didn't know the amount of money that it was or who the account belonged to. But it actually transpired once I was arrested, which I'll talk about shortly. The account actually belonged to a man with Alzheimer's. So here I was stealing thousands of pounds, theoretically, from an elderly man with Alzheimer's. Bless his heart. And yeah, it's an awful thing, and I did an awful bloody thing, and I regret every moment of it. But at the height of addiction, you just don't think about anybody else or the repercussions of your actions or how that person may feel. You're an addict, and you're funding what you think is right. And that's what I did. And I had no idea that it belonged to that man or what the family may have gone through. I don't know if they did. I was told that they weren't none the wiser. But yeah, it was an illness, and like I said, I again, common theme, rang up and just quit with immediate effect, knowing I'd left this massive audit trail. Like, I wasn't cautious about what I was doing because in my head, I didn't need to be cautious because I was going to give the money back. So I didn't need to hide what I was doing. I was signing the withdrawal slips with my own signature. Like, I wasn't trying to make it look like it was anybody else. I held it. It was me. So I'd quit with immediate effect. And I knew it wasn't long until there'd be a knock at my door, because I knew there would be, because I knew I'd left this massive audit trail. I was now 20 years old. I was pregnant. And one day I went baby shopping with my mum, and we were in the town of where the building society was. And as I got near near the building society, I saw the police car outside and my heart just sank. But I wanted it to sink because I knew what I was doing was wrong. Like, and I'd also lived with this for months as well. Like, no, every knock at the door was like, oh, shit, is that them? Is that them? Are they coming to get me? Like, every siren I'd hear, I'd wake up, hear a siren and think they were coming to get me. Like, I know I deserved that. But it was like, I knew it was going to be a weight lifted off my shoulders. So I knew it weren't long when I saw the police car outside the building society. And one night I was at work with my mum. She did like door-to-door loans sort of thing. So I'd just go sit in the car with her because I was lonely and didn't really have anything to do. And my dad rang and he was like, Jodie, the police are at the door at this time, but also obviously since all the gambling and losing all the money, I'd moved back home. So I was no longer in this rented accommodation with my ex. I was now living back at home with mum and dad, so they could obviously keep an eye on me. And they were like, what's it all about? And I was like, oh, I've just made up some shit lie. It's just about something I must have witnessed. He's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, they want you to meet them at the station. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go meet them at the station. So that I did. I was in there bloody hours. And obviously I didn't know what was going on the other side of the door where they were raiding my house and all what police obviously need to do to find out the bottom of what I've done. I was held in cell for hours upon hours, pregnant, awaiting to be interviewed. And obviously got into interview and they're like, would you like a solicitor? And I was like, no, I don't need a solicitor. I just knew that what I wanted to do. I mean, you should take a solicitor, not only if you are going to be honest, which I was going to be honest, but you should always take one in just because it's the right thing to do. But I was young and didn't think I needed one. Just wanted to get everything off my chest and talk. And I mean, at the time, like I said, I didn't know the extent of the theft. So I thought maybe a few grand. When they presented me withdrawal slip after withdrawal slip and told me that the total amount that I had stolen was £20,000 and that the account actually belonged to an elderly couple with Alzheimer's. And I poured my little heart out in that interview room, not my poor little heart, because there is no poor little about me, but I poured everything out and it was just like a relief. Like finally it was out in the open. Obviously it weren't that easy when I got out of the police station and I had the whole world to deal with. But at that time, it was just such a lovely way to be able to just be honest for once in what was now, 3 years of a height of a gambling addiction and theft and an awful whirlwind of crap, basically. I was able to be honest with everybody and it felt good. The police wanted to charge me with fraud by false representation from a trusted position. But once they raided my house and saw that I had nothing, I told them about the gambling. They had my bank statements. They could see what was going on. They suspected, but they didn't know. Once I was just fully honest, they lowered my charge to theft. So I was charged with theft. And when I was 37 weeks pregnant, I was put before a judge and I was given a custodial sentence of 6 weeks. So the judge told me, you'll obviously only do half of that in the hope that you come out and have your baby and you don't have him in prison. So I did come out at 39 weeks pregnant and had him 4 days later. But I was told by that judge the reason why he was putting me in prison was because I would get all the help that I would need to start my rehabilitation of gambling addiction. There'll be courses available. There'll be counselling available. There'll be everything. So when I finally landed into HMP Peterborough on the day of induction, I spoke to the officer and said, oh, look, I've got a gambling addiction. I've been told there's all these courses that I can do to make better. And he just laughed at me and was like, you're 37 weeks pregnant. You're too far pregnant, A, to be able to work or be on any courses. The only thing in here for gamblers is this leaflet, and basically passed me a leaflet and then shut me behind my door for 23 hours of the day. And was then made to deal with being highly vulnerable because I was 37 weeks pregnant. I was 21 years of age. I was being locked behind a steel door for 23 hours of the day with no rehabilitation, no help, no nothing. And I didn't even know that I was going to prison. I was told that I wouldn't be going to prison. So I wasn't expecting it and wasn't prepared for it, and no one was prepared for it. So there I was, 37 weeks pregnant, and just sat on a bloody plastic mattress with a leaflet about gambling addiction and a number which you can't call anyway. So it was just completely pointless.
When you're in prison at that point, obviously there's no support, and
No.
we know that from a research point of view. I've worked with women who have engaged with crime because of gambling addiction. One, to really it's misrepresented and just not understood in the area of gambling addiction, even, never mind how that intersects with kind of crime and punishment and things like that. But one of the things that kept coming up in that study was how not only did they not support or understand gambling, but actually there was a lot of kind of triggering activities in prison.
Oh yeah, you play
it.
bingo on the wing. Bingo on the wing. There was one night where I woke up and shouted out bingo in my sleep. So there I am, like on the weekend when I was allowed out, bingo, rehabilitating gambling addict, but they're putting bingo on the wing. Like, I mean, you might only win a Mars bar, but it's still the same dopamine release that you'd get from any type of gambling.
And it just, when you kind of, just the lack of understanding around gambling as an addiction and how that links specifically to financial crimes, right? It's probably one of the greatest trigger points for things like internal fraud or fraud and scams from the perspective of those who go, the perpetrator, is that there's always underlying issues. No one's born bad, no one's born a scammer. There's always something going on. And, to think that not only did you not get any help for the underlying issue, that 3 weeks in prison is, we talk about women being put in prison for their own good. And that's exactly what's happened to you. Although
I just think like the fact that they sent you to prison under the impression that 3 weeks and a leaflet was going to like completely reform you anyway.
It's just the judge. They don't know what is available.
They've got no idea because they don't like take the time, like not normal addictions, but like substance addictions.
It's physical.
Where there's like a physical contributing factor, that's like misunderstood enough, let alone when there's nothing. And there's like not nothing, but like, because gambling's not like it's not a physical effect on your physical being, it's a mental one. That can't be rehabilitated in 3 weeks. So I don't understand where that perception came from the judge.
Because then obviously the next part of my story is then where I re-offend again, because obviously when I first got out of prison, obviously my sole focus was my son, because I was a new mum. I was 21 years old, just had a baby. And for a good couple of years, I was that scared of what I'd done, that, I didn't want to gamble. But it was there. It was still niggling away at me daily, saying, in the back of your head. It's like an abusive relationship. And that's the one way that I can describe a gambling addict, an addiction, sorry. It's like, it's kind of like, oh, let me back in. I promise I'll be good. I'll be good this time.
It won't be toxic this time. It'll just be a one-off.
Yeah, just a one-off.
We'll be really happy.
Exactly, yeah. That's what it's telling you. Like, oh, go on then. Okay, come back in for a little while. But if you're bad, I'll have to chuck you out again.
Yeah.
But you never do. Once they're in, they're in. And that was it. I was in again, and I'd started gambling again, and had no money because obviously my partner wouldn't allow me to have money because of the past. And then I wanted my own money. So then I looked at ways that I needed to get money, because he wasn't going to give me money so I could gamble. So I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll do something else. I'll borrow the money again.
Yeah, it's like an addict will always find a way.
Exactly, and that is what they do, and that is what I did. And unfortunately, I am quite manipulative and clever, which does work to my advantage if I'm breaking the law, but I don't want to. But I would, like you said, I'll get what I want if that's what I want. And I wanted money, and I was like, well, how am I going to get it? I can't work. I can't go out to work because he works offshore. I'm at home with a baby. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to set up a Gumtree ad, and I'm going to borrow some money off some people. And I'll put that into gambling, and then I'll win that big amount again. Then I'll pay him back, and then I'll set up. I've got my own money. I'll get some help. I'll have private counselling, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah, so you've fallen straight back into
same
it. Mindset.
Yeah,
and
so it took me a couple of years until I fell back into it, but I did, as you always do, because you haven't dealt with the addiction. It's still there. Like, you're not having therapy, you're not having counselling. There's nothing stopping you, and I did defraud that time. So I set up an ad on Gumtree, like I said, knew that V Festival was coming up. The tickets go for about £250 a ticket. But I thought to myself, right, if I sell a bulk of 6 tickets, I'll do £100 a ticket. People are going to snap them up because they're cheap. So I contacted somebody on Gumtree, and pretended that I wanted to buy their tickets and said, okay, I'm interested in buying your tickets, but before I buy them, please can you send me a confirmation so I know it's legit? So they send me over their confirmation. I'm like, oh no, thanks, actually I've changed my mind. Now I've got their confirmation. So I go on Word, edit it to my name, my address. I was never clever, but never like, I'd put my full name on there, my full address, like, because I knew that I was going to pay again these people back. So I didn't need to hide who I was, didn't have to have a fake name, didn't have to do anything like that. I'd just go on there and be honest, you know. They had my Facebook. We became like theoretically friends. Like I did kind of build a friendship with them, which is again quite manipulative of me. But again, like I thought I was going to win to pay them back. And every time, and it was going to be a one-off. I just done it once and got the £600 and lost it. So then the next day, I had hundreds of messages of people contacting me, and I'd just go through them like, oh yeah, they're available. Yeah, if you send me £600, and when the tickets get here, then I'll send you them, because they come like a few weeks before the event. So I knew I had about 5-6 months to get the money back to give to them anyway. Or sometimes what I'd do is just take a deposit and I'd be like, oh, if you just pay me half now, and then half when the tickets get here, just for your security, manipulating them again to making them believe that I was a genuine person. And that behaviour is just disgusting, but that is what I did. So I did that, and when it came to about a couple of weeks before the festival, obviously people would contact me and like, Jodie, where's the tickets? Have you got the tickets? Have you sent them yet? And I was like, oh no, there's a problem, or making up some crappy excuses each time, until I built that much of a hole. I was like, shit, what am I going to do? Because people are now threatening me with the police and I'm going to go back to prison again, and I can't have that. So I went to my dad and my brother and was like, look, I've done this. I've done this thing, and told them all about it. Please, can you help me? Because I really don't want to go back to prison. And they obviously didn't want me to go back to prison, so they paid everybody back. But some people had already contacted the police, and so I was arrested yet again and convicted of fraud. This time, I say this time because I actually did this crime bloody twice, not once, twice. So at this time, the judge gave me 180 hours community service and probation for CBT, which is cognitive behaviour therapy, which obviously didn't work. Again, nothing to address my gambling addiction, nothing to help like counselling wise or therapy wise. Just shoved me in a graveyard, and I was there to scrub gravestones and cut grass for 180 hours every Sunday. But the judge did say to me then, he said, look, you've been in my courtroom twice now, because the judge actually reserved me and said, if you are ever in my courtroom again, you will go to prison. So this is your last chance. Like, oh, I'd already been to prison. He was like, this is your last chance. I'm giving you this. It's a suspended sentence. He gave me a suspended sentence for 2 years, 180 hours community service, and the CBT training. So again, I knew I couldn't commit a crime within 2 years or I'd go to prison. But the following year, still gambling, still stealing, still lying, I'd done another V Festival thing again. And again, because I was like, see, the worst thing my parents and brother probably did for me was bail me out, because I knew that they'd do it again. So I knew if I'd done it once and I said to them, look, I've done this again, they'd throw the money at it and it would be solved. So I said to myself, well, if I don't win this time, at least Ben and Dad will pay him back. But I'll do it before it gets too close to the festival, so no one will know. Again, it doesn't work like that, and it never does. And the same thing happened again, was arrested, put before a judge. This time was given a year custodial sentence. And at this time, I had 2 children as well. So I've got my daughter who was 3 and my son who was 4. And you'd think as a mother now of 2 young children, that would be enough to stop me stealing, frauding, you know, because I've also been told if I do it again, I will go to prison. But I was that selfish. I did not care. When I'm in the height of gambling and when I'm spinning, when I'm pressing that button, it's like I'm in a zone and it's just me and that screen. And it's at this point, it's not even about the winning. I could win 10 grand and I wouldn't be satisfied until I had nothing, because I felt more at ease going to sleep knowing I had nothing than going to sleep knowing I had 10 grand. And that sounds absolutely bizarre, but the addiction was now not even about the winning. It doesn't even make sense, and I don't even understand it makes sense, because I can't sit here and say to you, oh, I'm clean of gambling.
Like if you've got something there in the bank, then there's something to gamble.
Exactly. So I felt more relief having nothing. But then when I had nothing, I then had to find ways to get money, because I had to feed that addiction. So it's just a vicious circle. And unless you're dealing with it properly, it'll just keep happening and keep happening. And that's what it did. And it just kept happening and kept happening. Now, this time when I went to prison, again, there was one course, but it was, again, CBT. But that's what I did. But when I came out this time, I really took the time. So obviously got a year. I did about 12 weeks inside the rest on tag. Now I really took that time to really focus on like this is not your life, Jodie. You are not going to be this person. Like, you know, you've been to prison twice now. You've now got 2 children. All they're going to do is grow up and look at you. And do you want to drag them through the prison system and be that person, or do you want more for them? So I, you know, had never been away from my children, and that was the toughest time in my life, being away from them, hearing them on the phone to cry that they want me and I wasn't there. Like, what kind of mother does that to their children? And I knew I needed to get better. So when I got out of prison that time, the kid's dad had gone off to Cyprus to a wedding that weren't happening because his mate had already cheated on his wife. So the wedding weren't happening. So it was just a glorified holiday. So the day that I got out of prison, he was on a plane on the way to Cyprus. And I walked into my house and he'd put all my stuff in the loft. I didn't even have a pair of knickers. And I'd left all my stuff in prison that I'd been in prison with because I didn't want any association with it. So I got in and I was like wanting to get these clothes off me because I'd been in jail with them and I just wanted fresh, you know. And I was like, well, where's all my stuff? Couldn't get hold of him because he's on a bloody plane on the way to Cyprus. And there I am just sat with these 2 little humans that had missed their mum for like 12 weeks. Their dad's not even there to tell me about like their time. I hadn't seen them the whole time I was away as well because he would not bring them to prison, which now I look at and I'm thankful for. But at the time I couldn't understand it. I missed them dearly and they missed me and they needed their mum and I wasn't there. And then to get home and not know, obviously I spoke to them daily and knew ins and outs, but it's like they weren't mine and that house wasn't mine. And I was just existing in there for 2 weeks and I couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't want to be with him. Like, he'd mentally made me feel like I would never have anybody or anything because no one would want to be with me because of all the awful things I've done. And I should be grateful that he has stood by me. Although, yes, he stood by me, he didn't stand by me. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to explain without going down a route of talking badly about the father of my 2 children. But it was a very volatile relationship and it wasn't nice. And there were some pretty bad things that happened within that time. So I called my dad in despair and was like, Dad, I need to get out of here. This is not the life I want. And if I want to do better for my kids and for me, I need to get out of this house and I need my own place. So Dad gave me some money. We found somewhere in that time. And by the time the kids' dad got back, I'd moved out and took them with me. And he was like, you can't take my kids. You know, I had them while you were fucked off to prison. Sorry, my language, beat that out. And whatever, but he worked offshore anyway, so he wasn't there half the time. So it was like, all right, then we'll have 50-50 custody if you want, but you're going to have to give up your job because, you know, it's got to be fair play. So no, we split up, went our separate ways, moved into this little house with my children, and I was quite happy for a couple of months, but he was there just like the addiction, really, knocking on my door. Oh, come back, it'll be better this time. You know, we've been through so much together. No one's going to want to be with you. You'll not be with anyone. I kept ignoring it, kept pushing it out. Met somebody new. Wasn't with him for very long because someone got involved and told him all about my past. And I was like, oh, fuck's sake, I'm going to have to get back with him because I'm never going to be able to move on from him. So I did. I got back with him again and we lived separately, but we're together, kind of. But that never worked. And again, I was wanting to gamble all the time. And I then like made the connection of why I was unhappy and why I wanted to gamble. I think it's because I was so unhappy in my relationship as well that I was trying to...
Yeah, you're like seeking that dopamine.
Yeah, and I did awful things to him as well. Like, I mean, I'm not innocent. I stole money off him all the time. Like, he had a good, healthy bank account and I rinsed that dry. So he was also having to deal with me as an awful partner as I was him. And it wasn't a nice relationship and we needed to break away, but no one was ever strong enough to actually do that. And it wasn't until I met my partner, who I'm with now, that I realised what love actually was, and he changed my world, and and I love him to pieces, and he is the best dad to my children, and he saved me, and like even when I tried to get out of that relationship, I owed money, and behind my back, he paid him off and was like, now leave her alone, please. And he, like I said, he saved me. And for a long time I hadn't gambled. I hadn't gambled for years and years and years. And then in 2022, my best friend died. She had a very short battle with cancer. She was diagnosed in the February and died in the December. And again, the gambling came back then. And I'll be honest, haven't really got hold of it. I mean, I know my triggers. My trigger is alcohol. I won't gamble sober ever. I know if I have a drink, I'm tempted. I won't sit here and lie to you all and say, I'm completely clean of gambling. I'm not. But I think about 60 days for my last relapse. I mean, my last relapse weren't even a big one. It was like, I think I deposited like 20 quid, done a couple of spins. I was like, no, I don't want this. And was able to push it out, but it's still there. And I do have counts and I have hypnotherapy and stuff. And it does help, but the addiction is still there. And it is hard. It's so hard to get away from. And it's a killer. And people just aren't aware of what it can do to a person. And people are so naive to think that people just get easy just to stop it, because it's just not that easy.
Well, no, it literally, like, there's studies that show that it literally rewires your brain and like the chemical structure in your brain. And to like for people to sit there and say, oh, it's a choice, it's literally not a choice. If you're in that mindset of this is something I have to do, you have to do it. There is always a way to do it. And that's where people don't understand it. If you're in that mindset and you've made that like click in your head that like it has to happen today, it has to happen at this time, like there's nothing that's going to stop you. Like absolutely nothing.
I know, my kids couldn't even stop me.
No.
Like, and they are my world.
It's
and
literally like you just completely switch off from everything and all like reasonable thinking. Like I don't even like calling it that, but
there was a time where I tried to take my own life. Like I tried to kill myself because I thought that was the only way out of this. The only way out was to stop hurting my kids, stop hurting my family, to stop hurting everyone around me, even myself, was to end my life. And that was what it did to me. Like I wanted to die. I stood in front of the rocks at where I live by a beach with like my phone. I ran out the house. I don't know if I was actually going to do it or I was attention seeking, but I just told everyone, I was like, right, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm gone. I'm going to go kill myself. And I think they say that people that are going to kill themselves don't actually say. So I don't know if I was going to do it or not, but I knew that I felt like I wanted to. And if I wanted to throw myself in that sea and I wanted to die because I just didn't want to be this person anymore. I didn't, and I don't. But sometimes it just gets you and there is nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do. And you try and you try and you try and you're just like, I'm just fucking sick of it. I just want to give up, because what is it going to take for me to stop? What is it going to take? And obviously I've done awful things throughout my life to fund it. And I am truly sorry for the things I've done. And I don't want to be that person, which is when I took to TikTok, I was like, right, I'm going to tell my story. And if I can stop one person from going down the route that I took, then I've succeeded. And I didn't ever think it would take off. But my inbox after the first few TikToks was booming. And I have people that contact me that have never spoke about their addiction to anyone because they're too scared to, and they feel that they can confide in me. And I'm like, by no means am I like sitting there and saying I'm clean and I'm going to help you get through this, but I'll point them in the directions to the organisations and the charities that they might not know about. And the first step is admitting you have a problem. And if they're admitting it to me, a stranger, and I can help them admit that to their family, if I just help one person and I can change the perception of other people and make that one person feel better about themselves, and I've succeeded. And then the account grew and more people were coming to me, and that's how Nicola found me. She contacted me and said, obviously about fraud. And I think my reply was, you do know I'm not actually the victim of fraud. I actually committed the fraud. Because I said to Jamie, I go, look at this message I've got. And he was like, do they think that you're a victim of fraud? I go, I don't know, I'm going to have to ask her, because I don't want her thinking that I'm the victim and I'm the bugger that's actually done it. And she go, no, that's exactly why I want to talk to you. I was like, oh shit, what does she want to know? And then when she came forward and obviously was like wanting to work with me, and I was like, wow, I want to change my future. If I can turn my negative past into something positive for the future and change other people's lives and help them not become a victim of what I've done, then I've turned my life around and I've been able to do something positive with the future and leave the negative behind. Whilst it's still there and I'm happy to talk about it, it doesn't define me. It's not who I am. It's not who I want to be. And it's not who I'm going to be.
I think there's such a power in telling stories. I think there's a lot of people who will listen to your story and be like, they're like the net curtain twitchers, aren't they? They like the gossip. They want to know because they can't imagine your life. But I think there's way more people in the world that have had to make difficult choices or been in circumstances where they can relate, whether it's the gambling addiction or the relationship they've been in. The reality is that our lives are messy and they're complex and things happen. And when those things happen, we're not always going to respond to them in the right way or in ideal ways. Exactly.
And like people are capable of doing bad things. It doesn't make them a bad person. And I did a bad thing and I was a bad person, but I'm not going to be a bad person for the rest of my life. I'm going to put it behind me. I'm going to make something good of myself. And that's just what I want to do now moving forward.
I think there's loads of things that we can learn is that, so crime is a human behaviour, right? It's a response to human activities. It's also a social construction. So, we put rules around things and boundaries around things, and those that abide by them are good and those that are outside of those lines are bad. It's very binary thinking, but the world's messy. And there's a couple of things from your story that I find really interesting and important that maybe go a little bit underneath what people would normally think. So I think generally, particularly in the world of research, we accept that there's a correlation between women who've had kind of coercive and controlling relationships who've then gone on to commit fraud. There is also a similar relationship between women who've experienced those types of relationships who've gone on to have gambling addictions or other forms of addiction. One of the biggest things we found in the women's study was that winning early on in gambling is that if you went and deposited that £100 and you lost it all, you probably would have walked away from it and that addiction would never have been formed. Or, you may have done it across your life course. But
is it 99% of gambling addictions stem from that first win?
Yeah, a big win early on. And so there's the human side that really interests me from, we know these things, but what do we do to protect against them then? We know that a big win can lead into gambling addiction, but the people that you are winning from, so the companies, the gaming companies.
The business,
their business is get you to win big and spend all that money back with them and lose it. So their business model almost is reliant on gambling addiction, yet there are controls. The MLRO, so the money laundering reporting officer in a casino or in an online gaming company, has to abide by responsible gambling at the same time as the whole business is set up to get people to spend more money into gambling. So
what did they say? If you can't gamble responsible, then stop. Something like that. And all their adverts, there are hundreds. Have you ever listened to Heart Radio and how many competitions they do a day? And then you hear William Hill, Bet365. You don't hear the come buy a gram off me, do you? Or, do you know what I mean though? And or come to the shop and buy a bottle of vodka. You don't hear that, but they don't realise they're doing it. I'll sit there at work typing away and all I can hear is Bet365, or whatever their advert is. They don't know what they're actually mentally doing to you. And I don't understand how they're allowed to advertise it. So, it's an active addiction to so many people, how they can get away with it.
Notice that on all the televised adverts, they always show a loss. And I just think that's so bizarre because in my opinion, their whole business is to take your money from you and feed into this addictive behaviour for some people. But they always have to advertise it as a loss. And I just think, I understand it, but it's not accurate.
No, and some of the biggest programs you watch are funded. Before it goes on, it's Foxy Bingo. What are they? I just don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't understand
Grand
why they
National
can do that.
Or football or
they're sponsored by Bet365. They've got it written on the back of their bloody t-shirts, which is what are you teaching children? That children that aspire as these footballers that have got Bet365 written on their back. What are we doing to these children to already start talking about gambling at such a young age as well?
And the reality of it is that a lot of what we're driven is aspirational. So you're kind of holding on in this gambling addiction that you're going to win, so much so that it's not about the winning anymore. The winning's just a vehicle to doing more gambling. But how it starts, and you've did an excellent point around kind of the key figures that are in our young people's lives. So, sporting heroes and whatnot. If you think about even, Only Way is Essex people who are teaming up with Foxy Bingo and things like that, saying, look at my aspirational life. And the correlation or the subconscious is that gambling is a key part of that. So it may be nothing to do with how they got their money in the first place. They're sporting heroes or they've been on a reality TV show. Yeah. But by aligning with those things, they're glamorizing this, really potentially harmful activity.
It's probably because they've never dealt with anyone with an addiction of gambling. They might have. I doubt they'd walk around with a bottle of vodka written on the picture on their back, because they know what damage that could do to a child or a human with that kind of addiction. But they don't understand the mental side of gambling addiction and what that can do to a person. So, which is probably why they do it and don't even think about or understand it.
One of the things as well for particularly kind of fraud and financial crime is that there's, in my experience of people that I've worked with who've got experience, who've gone down similar paths to you, is that there's people who are in the financial services professions, work in banks, work in financial services of all different types, who have responded to different pressures in their lives. I can definitely think of, more than a couple of other people who were in positions of trust and authority within financial services and stole from the business or defrauded the business to fund their gambling addiction, which often grew from the pressures of their job. And so there's another kind of line of inquiry, I guess, around like the controls that are in place within financial institutions. Now, I know it's quite a while ago for you, but in terms of being able to take that money from that, seemingly dormant account or that vulnerable person's account, like, how easy was that for you to actually do at the time?
Easy. I mean, I was classed as trusted, I guess. But yeah, easy. Just log on, put my password in, type the amount I want to take in, slip the withdrawal slip in, sign it, take the money out, go. I mean, it is easy, and anybody could still do it if they wanted to, but it's the fact that they probably wouldn't, because they are trustworthy and don't need to. But the accessibility of other people's accounts, in my opinion, back then in 2016, this was bloody easy. Really easy. If it was difficult and there were more measures in place, I probably maybe would have thought twice about doing it if there was something popped up and I was like, oh shit, no, can't do that. But it wasn't. It was just straightforward, done.
What about from the other way, where you were taking the money out of your account? Like, what was the space of that? Was that within one day?
How do you mean?
When you were like taking the money out your savings account after your big win and you were back at your mum and dad's on the PC?
Oh, that was instant. So I'd ring Barclays whilst I was in front of the computer spinning and just say, can you transfer 1,000 to my savings, to my current? And then that'd be it. And then I'll start spinning again. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So do you think like if anyone had been like
I think now there's gambling blocks in places, aren't there? You can put a gambling block on your account, but back then you couldn't. So you can go on your banking app now and freeze your card from gambling
couldn't
transactions.
Question it or anything.
No. I mean, there's these responsible gambling, obviously, from the casino's point of view, but not from the banks. They probably did ask me some questions at the time, like, what's this money for? I probably gave them some shitty excuse and was able to do it. I don't actually remember, to be honest. This was 2010. But now on gambling sites, I know that you can self-exclude yourself, but most sites allow you to self-exclude yourself for 24 hours. So, 24 hours. So you'll go on, self-exclude, and they'll be like, how long do you want to exclude yourself for? On a lot of the international sites, the maximum you can exclude yourself for is 24 hours. Most of the English UK sites are 5 years, so you can exclude yourself for 5 years. But a gambler will know that if they want what they want, they can seek out of the UK and gamble internationally and just put a stop on their account for 24 hours. And after 24 hours, it's open again. And there's a lot less regulations in place to online casinos internationally than there are in the UK. So you can just do it if you really want to.
And I think it's the self-exclusion. So you've got to recognise that there's a problem. So you've got to go to kind of GamCare and put that stop on because you've recognised and you want to do something about it. And, you know, that obviously goes across, you know, casinos, it goes across online, but we all know that you can open another account. Well, this is what I was going to say,
because although I self-excluded myself, well, my mum wasn't self-excluded. And a gambler will get what a gambler wants, and she will be selfish, and she will open an account in her mother's name and her father's name and her partner's name to gamble, knowing as well if she wins, she's probably not going to withdraw it anyway, so she hasn't got to provide the ID to take the withdrawal, but she's getting a hit from gambling, and in the meantime doing all the awful things that come with gambling. I mean, not everybody is an addict, so some people can gamble responsibly, and it can be enjoyable for some people. Same as alcohol, same as drugs. Some people use it recreational and can enjoy that, but there's that addictive person that can't. And I just think there needs to be so many more measures in place to help protect society, because at the moment there isn't.
I think one of the key things is that, as well, is that you worked in financial services, you had all of this going on at home and the pressures and obviously the gambling addiction, is that one of the things I would push for within financial services around staff wellbeing is that there's a real correlation and risk there, that if your staff, don't have access to things like counselling or an awareness of support services across the spectrum for like loads of different things, social problems. Working in a university like I used to, there was a whole, you could get free legal advice. You could have, 8 online sessions with a counsellor if you were going through, a divorce or whatever. They were just like perks that were given to your staff so that if you were struggling, you had an outlet to go to. Within financial services particularly, there's probably an opportunity there to educate their staff around things like gambling addiction, or how you can get help if you are in an abusive relationship that actually benefits the company and their clients, because it potentially has an opportunity to help.
I think banks play a big part as well. So on my 18th birthday, I worked at Barclays Bank, and do you know what Barclays did for me on my 18th birthday? They set me up a staff loan and an overdraft and a credit card. Wow. Because I was 18, and to the personal banker, I was getting them commission. But what is that teaching an 18-year-old? Oh, you've turned 18 now. Here, have some free money, but you've got to pay it back. But you haven't got to pay as much back because you work for the bank. So they're already kind of teaching you an ill way with money when they should be responsible in that situation not to do that. But I don't think staff loans are a thing anymore. But back then, it was basically 0% interest. So you could just borrow this money and you could keep adding to your staff loan. Like, whilst working in a financial institute, that they shouldn't want you to have debt, but they were encouraging you to have it because it helps your credit rating. But at the age of 18, on my birthday,
no, that's
I already
bizarre.
had an ill relationship with money from that early age already, because they weren't teaching you, they didn't get your terms and conditions and understand it all correctly. So I was already taught at a very young age that money was easy to come by.
I think there's a real kind of call and demand, or there should be a call and demand for ethical processes in financial services, both staff side, customer side, and greater understanding of the unintended consequences of some of these things.
Now, isn't there, responsible lending? The responsible lending wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah, there's been greater moves around responsible lending, consumer protections. There's an awful lot of kind of moves in the gambling industry, but the figures show themselves. It was declared, gambling is being kind of declared a public health issue. There's been a lot of pressure put on the government to deal with it, because there are knowingly around about 400 suicides every year related to gambling related harms. And that's just the ones that, we know about, that have had, they've written it on the note they left or what have you, that, the coroner has put that death to gambling related harms. What about the people who, end up in prison or self-harming, that we know is very extremely high amongst women in prison? And there's so many harms that come from gambling, whether that be the harms to yourself, the victim whose money you stole, but there's also the harms to your children of not having their mum there for those 6 months. There's the harm to, kind of. And I was lucky. Society.
I mean, there's a lot of women that do a lot longer, and their children will be impacted on their decisions for the rest of their life. I mean, my kids are brilliant kids, and I am really lucky because I'm going to hold my hands up here and say I'm a bloody good mum, and I don't care what anyone says, I am, and I know I am. My kids are proof of that. Just because I've done wrong doesn't mean that my children are going to do wrong, and I'd like to think that because I've taught them mum was a dick and mum did this, you do not want to go down this path. They know. But a lot of children are like sugar-coated around that as well. And when I took to TikTok, a few of my friends, like, well, I wouldn't say friends, associates contact me and like, I blocked you because I don't want my kids seeing that you've been to prison. I'm like, why do you not want your kids to see that I've been to prison? What are you teaching your children? You need to teach your children that, you know, normal people do bad things and normal people like your children. If they make a mistake, they can also end up in prison. I don't understand why they would,
it's like taboo
block
subject.
Me. Yeah, block me because they don't want their children to see about my past. But I'll own my past and I'll be honest. And if someone asks me, I'll be honest. I say, well, what do your children think of it? What does it matter what my children think of it? My children love me and I love my children, and my children understand why I done what I done. And other people have like stopped children seeing my children because of what I've done. And I'm just like, why would you ever do that? I don't understand why you'd penalise my children over something I've done, because that says a lot more about you as a parent than it does me.
Yeah, if you can't trust your parenting skills to like give the same message that you've given to your children, and you have to completely remove them from it, then they'll probably end up doing something themselves. If you're overly strict with your kids, they'll go one of two ways. So that it could be having the opposite effect for them.
I mean, my daughter came home once and was like, Mum, this girl's teasing me, saying, hi, your mum's been to prison, your mum's been to prison. And I was just ignore her, darling, just ignore her. I know, but well, it's embarrassing. I get that's embarrassing, but you've got to remember, she's not a very nice person. Just hold your head up high, you know, just say, yeah, and what? And then she'll shut up. And she did. She went in school and was like, yeah, so? And she was like, oh, because it didn't get to her. So she was like, oh, so she stopped. The kids have had to have a little bit of that. But I think that's only made them grow a bit of a bone in their back and understand that, you know, everyone makes mistakes and it's okay to make a mistake. It's what you learn from it and what you do from it moving forward.
Taking from your experiences and what you've been through, what do you think we can do going forward?
I don't know. What can you do?
Well, I think for me, and the good that's come out of this and us meeting on TikTok of all places, my favourite place on the internet.
Guilty pleasure.
Total guilty pleasure. But the importance of relationships is finding your people and people who are motivated to do something positive. We've all got our story and there's a power in sharing that story, but we want it to be more than just telling the story. It's about what lessons can we learn and how can we build better systems that are protective? How can we raise awareness of things that are not understood properly? So, you know, the call to action from us is, you know, what can we do? We fight fraud, so we can do that together. And I think extending the invitation to kind of join our team and let's do some research, let's raise some awareness. Let's be that support group for people who may have got involved, but let's also raise awareness of where addictions like gambling addiction can lead. Let's empower people who may be going through it to make that change themselves, but also let's put that awareness out there to prevent victims of fraud moving forward and do something for good.
I'd love to. I'd love to change a negative past into a positive future. And if you'll have me, I'll do it alongside you.
Brilliant. Let's do it.
Let's do it.